maintaining a persona or trying to be perfect is exhausting.
It
But when
sure
you can
is.
be comfortable in your own skin and teach from that place or lead from that place, it's still work, but it's a different kind of work and it's a lot more energizing.
Hello there, it's me, Steve Meller, and welcome in to Growth Ready, the podcast that allows high performers to reveal the reality behind what it means to ready yourself for growth, the personal and professional challenges along the growth journey, while also allowing the high performance executive coach in me to satisfy his curiosity toward what drives optimal performance. On this episode, we are joined by the success coach himself and keynote speaker, Mitch Matthews, whose mission to encourage us to dream, think, and do is not just the title of his globally recognized podcast, but it's a challenge to ready ourselves as high performers to drop our masks, shift our mindsets towards our dreams, and accept that there's very little perfect about this growth journey. Hey guys, as we get started here with the episode, I want to just take 1 minute of your time to make a request for you to subscribe and rate the show. For our show to be easily discovered by other potential listeners, we need our current listeners, that's you, to take the time to not only subscribe, but to also rate the show. Whether you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, whatever platform of choice, there are typically ways to be rating the show. So go ahead and click something like that 5th star and be sure to take that additional time to leave a comment or two about why it is you enjoy listening to the Growth Ready podcast. Your efforts on this will allow our show to be more discoverable, which means we're going to find more listeners and continue to have that significant impact on the community of human performance and personal development that I know you are all benefiting from by being listeners to this show. Please go ahead, take the time, subscribe, rate the show today. Hey, and while you're at it, why don't you share it with a few people as well? I appreciate you guys. Let's get to the interview. Hello there, and welcome into the most recent installment of the Growth Ready podcast. I'm very excited to be welcoming in not only my guest for today, but someone that I will be the guest to on their podcast. We're doing a little back-to-back with my buddy Mitch Matthews on this episode of Growth Ready. And I'm so excited to spend the better part of 2 hours with you now, but don't worry, Growth Ready listeners. This is not a 2-hour interview. We're going to have about a typical 45 minutes, and then I'm going to be hopping onto Mitch's pod soon after this. And I'm excited to be going back and forth with you for the next couple of hours, brother. But hey, before we go any further, we have to start where I start with every single guest, and that is, what does it mean to you, Mitch, to be growth ready?
I love that. And I love systems, and I love leaning into those things because as you listen to your podcast, it's amazing what that one simple question, all the different areas that it can take you to. So I love the concept of being growth ready. And for me, as a recovering perfectionist, I always thought being growth ready was being perfect, right? Having all of the answers, knowing everything that you need to know, having the perfect plan before you start. But as I've learned from 20 plus years of being an entrepreneur and getting better at letting go of my perfectionist tendencies, I've learned to be growth ready, at least in my book, is to stay curious and stay open, as opposed to like not teaching from the destination, but teaching from the journey. And that has made all the difference in the world.
Teaching from the journey. I'm curious straight away. Again, I love that we're already going to be making this a lot about curiosity, about open-mindedness, about the journey. But I want to start there. Curiosity, open-mindedness, journey. When you look at your journey, what is it that allows you, when you think about that evolution of the recovering perfectionist, what is it now from an intentionality standpoint, how you show up each and every day that allows you to be open-minded, to remain curious on this journey?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think we have similar roles and probably similar goals as well, in that part of my life is teaching others, either as a speaker or as a coach. And before I got into the industry, I had that as a goal, but I kind of thought, well, I need to go do something that proves I'm credible. Like in your world, I would need to go and win a gold medal, right?
Right.
And have that one achievement that would prove that people should listen to me. But what I learned was that, especially as I watched the industry and learned from others, that oftentimes if we look to one thing to be the thing that makes us credible or that helps us to feel satisfied in life, if we look at that one thing, that one end goal, that end goal, even if we achieve it, has a shelf life.
Yeah.
And so what so much freedom came from just saying, you know what? I'm going to get curious and then I'm going to teach from the journey. And there might be some accomplishments that come along with that as I do it,
Hmm.
but that will be timeless. That won't have a shelf life,
Yeah.
right? That will be something that as I go, I can just say, hey, come along with me on this journey. And what's beautiful about that is that really has allowed me to live I think probably a more authentic life.
Hmm.
I think, kind of that idea of teaching from the accomplishment also does invite perfectionism
Yep.
and persona, and I think this happens. You and I both coach leaders and high achievers, and persona is also one of those things that sneaks in,
Mm.
which it's a you probably familiar with. It's a Latin word for mask,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of times people will say, well, fake it till you make it. You get into a leadership role, fake it till you make it, act confident, even if you're not. And there's an element of truth in that. But I always think that when it comes to persona,
Hmm.
the only person that's convinced a persona is working is the person trying to, with the persona,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Everybody else in the room just knows, hey, I don't think that's you, right?
Hmm.
And then that persona tears at our credibility, it tears at our connection, it tears at that the trust and the loyalty,
Hmm.
all of those things. So to be able
Yeah.
to confess and say, staying curious allows us to say, I don't know, but let's figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Or I'm not sure what the one way is,
mhm.
but let's find out. Let's figure it out together.
Right. Let's find a way as opposed
Right.
to the way. Right. And so,
Exactly.
and this idea of the one end goal distracting us in a way from where our feet are, this journey that you
Right.
reference, the one end goal, the notion of this destination. Again, you reference my background. Like when I used to work with athletes, and as I've looked back over the film in my mind over the years of doing that work, one thing that became so abundantly obvious, especially now working in this world I work in, similar to you, is those high achievements, those Olympic gold medals, those making U.S. Olympic teams, those NCAA champions, all this kind of stuff. This was incredible. It was amazing achievements. But when I actually looked at the journey to getting there, the only time we really talked about the so-called goal, the so-called destination,
Yeah.
was the moment we started, and then from time to time when we got off the path, when the path became something that was no longer serving the goal, we would then use the destination as a way to, hey, this is our compass, remember, this is our north, and
Yeah.
we're going a little bit west right now. What's that about? Like, do we still have the same goal? And
Yeah.
suddenly that goal becomes a star in the distance, a light down this tunnel. But really, all of the success came, as you're saying, from the journey, from the
Right.
decision to remain in the moment and do the work, to use your word, as authentically as possible.
Yeah. Well, and it's what I love about that too is it is like the success is in the journey, but
Hmm.
it's also the joy is in the
Right.
journey, right? Like you're exactly right. When we future trip, when we just look at the goal and say, well, I'll allow myself to really enjoy it once I check this off my list, once I get this done, once this is behind us,
Hmm.
then, we'll never fully experience it because as you well know, oftentimes if you're so goal focused that you only allow yourself joy or satisfaction,
Hmm.
uh, you know, when you get that thing done, as you will know, lightning often strikes that same moment, and you
Yeah.
are focused on a new goal. You have a new thing that you need to accomplish,
Yeah.
and then therefore that window of joy, it might be minutes, it might
Hmm.
be seconds, or maybe not even that. I mean, I know you've got such a great podcast too, and you probably talked to a lot of successful people, and the number of authors, as an example,
Sure.
that hit New York Times bestseller and think, if they think that's what's going to bring satisfaction, if they think that's what's going to bring joy,
Hmm.
it's often they get there and go, well, I'm on the list, but I'm not number one, right?
Right.
Or I'm number one, but I'm not number one in all categories. It's like I just talked with a good friend, and his goal for a long time had been to have a business that made $10 million in a
Right.
year. And we were sitting down because he was on track to do that.
Hmm.
And what's funny is he was about a month away from achieving this goal. And you'll appreciate this. One of his very good friends, he has a network of entrepreneurs, but one of his very good friends, when he's on the precipice, like the doorway to achieving this goal that he had been working on for a very long time of hitting 10 million in revenue in a year, one of his friends just sold his business and made $1 billion. So here he's been working on this goal. It's the end all be all, right?
Hmm.
And his buddy next to him now achieves something that is,
Yeah.
light years. He feels like
Right.
light years ahead of where he
Dwarfs
was.
10 million.
And
Right. Yeah.
now this monumental thing that he had been
Yeah.
working towards, and had thought would bring everything, all of a sudden now seems so small.
Mm.
And what's beautiful about this particular friend is he's definitely been growth ready and
Hmm.
focused on the journey more than just the destination. So he was just fine, but we were laughing about how that happens so often, that when we're just about to achieve that, or when we have achieved that thing, somebody else around us achieves something else entirely, or a
Yeah.
crisis happens or something else, and it could rob us of that moment, unless we've been enjoying the moments as we've
Yeah.
been getting there.
Yeah, and there's two sides that I'm starting to see come through so far. Is this on one side we have the perfectionist, right? And then
Right.
we have on the other side we have this journey. But there's I want to, before I go to the journey, because there's elements of that I'm hearing even just through that great story there of your friend that I want to explore a little bit more. But before we go there, when I hear this term perfectionist sometimes,
Yeah.
especially for our listeners, I actually think a lot of people will immediately put their guard up and say, "Well, I'm not a perfectionist.
Right.
I'm not a perfectionist." Like, again, I give myself grace, all this kind of thing. And I think this is a great opportunity when you say something like recovering perfectionist. What
Yeah.
how did you see yourself? Like, what was that description? What was that version of Mitch where
Yeah.
it's like, man, if you'd met Mitch back then versus Mitch today, this is the glaring difference between these two guys. Because I'm really
Exactly.
just interested to hear, like, from your perspective, what did perfectionism look like in
Yeah.
your world?
I love this. I love this topic, boy. We're going to be talking for 4 hours, man. I think I'm just going to throw up my schedule for the day. So I love this because you're exactly right. Most people, when they hear perfectionist, they think, that's not me,
Mhm.
right? Because oftentimes when we think perfectionist, at least I know I did, when I thought perfectionist, I thought, well, a perfectionist, everything's perfect in their world.
Yeah.
Like, their desk is perfectly organized.
Mhm.
Their home looks like something out of El Decor, right?
Yeah.
Everything's in its place. But in actuality, true perfectionists, we're pile people, right? I'll
Mhm.
give you an example. Like, you might think that that perfectionist desk is everything it's in its spot. It looks like, a Mac store, for crying
Yeah.
out loud, right? But a perfectionist, we're pile people. There's a very good chance if you're a perfectionist and you're looking around, if you're sitting at your desk, there's a good chance that a corner of your desk has a pile. Because what happens is you go to a meeting and you come back and maybe they, gave you a couple of pieces of paper and you come back from that meeting and you don't have the perfect place to put that. So you put that on the corner of your desk. You're like, I'm going to put that in the perfect place. But I just have to figure that out. So I'm going to put that
Mhm.
there. And then you go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And this pile grows. And then somebody lets you know they're going to be coming to your desk or coming to your office. And so you're like, oh crap, now what do I need to do with that pile? You're like, and so the pile then goes into a box or a bag or someplace else in your office and all that stuff. And now people are like, oh, wait, maybe I am, right?
Mm.
Another sign of perfectionism is that you're really good at starting stuff, but you need a deadline to finish it, right?
Yeah.
Like if you were in college, there's a good chance if you're a recovering perfectionist that you started the paper, but if it was due at midnight, you were hitting send at 11:59 because you needed that deadline to get you past that last 10 to 20% that wasn't quite perfect yet. So
Mhm.
you needed the deadline to say, screw it, I got to do it, right? It's
Yeah.
it's not perfect, but it's done. And I would say recovering perfectionists understand that. They acknowledge that. And it's not like we're, producing crappy work. We still produce excellence, but oftentimes that last 10 to 20% can be so painful,
Yeah.
right? And so with perfectionism, it's recognizing those things of going, all right, it's not going to be perfect.
Yep.
I've changed the target now as far as we don't shoot for perfect in our organization. We shoot for excellence. And to be able to say, okay, as often as possible, we are going to hit excellence. We're going to try to stay aware and say, whether it's this workshop, whether this online training, this podcast episode is not going to be perfect,
Right.
but what does excellence look like for this topic?
Yeah.
Or what does excellence look like for this experience? Now, you asked me like what was pre-perfectionist and post-recovering perfectionist.
Right.
For me personally, I'll let you know like another great example of how I'm doing better. I'm not perfect yet, Steve, but
You're
I'm,
not
I'm
supposed
doing
to be.
better.
You're not supposed to
Right,
be. Come on.
exactly right, exactly right. So I came up through the pharmaceutical world. That's kind of
Okay.
where I had a bolus dose of my corporate experience before launching our own business. And in that world, I had company car, I had the whole deal, right? But when I finally decided it was time to launch our business and do it full time, I gave back my company car, and for the first time in a long time, almost a decade, I got to buy my own car. Like I buy myself a car, right? Now, what's interesting is a perfectionist will often ask, not what kind in that kind of situation, what kind of car do I want?
Right.
A perfectionist will ask, what kind of car will make me look successful? Right? What kind of car will make me look like I've got it all put together?
Sure.
I got all my ducks in a row.
Yep.
Now, what's funny is, Steve, is that for me, that led me to a bright red Mercedes. Actually, Mercedes calls it turn signal red, which I thought was very good. Now,
Very
I
nice.
will say it was a really good looking car. It was red sedan, brown leather interior, gorgeous. My wife looked smoking hot in it. So, like I said, it was a really nice car. But what's funny is that I didn't buy that car because I loved the car. I mean, it was a nice car. I bought the car because I thought this is what's going to allow me to pull up to Starbucks and look like I got it all figured out. Right? Now, I think in God's, great sense of humor, it was a used Mercedes. And almost immediately, I just started dropping oil. So the very car that I bought so that I could pull up to the front row in the parking lot in front of Starbucks, I started to have to look for the back row of the parking lot because I was dropping oil like crazy. So like if anybody knew, I'd pull away and there was a fresh little circle of oil,
Right.
shiny. And like
Yeah.
that hadn't been there for a while. That was it. So what I love about that is that that's a story that I point to because it's absolutely true.
Sure.
And with perfectionism, it's something you have to step into and give yourself permission to say, hey, I'm not going to go for perfect. I'm going to go for excellence. I'm going to stay curious. I'm going to continue to learn. I'm going to teach from the journey. And what's beautiful about that is that within about a year and a half, I'd sold the red Mercedes. And I said to myself, what kind of car do I want to drive?
Yeah.
What kind of life do I want to have? And what kind of vehicle helps me to establish that? And that's when I moved into Jeep Wranglers.
There you go.
You
Love
know what
it.
I mean? And I was like, then I stepped into that and I was like, okay, this feels right.
Right.
This feels like a home.
Yep.
And so it's one of those and then I drove Jeep Wranglers for 15 years.
There
So
you go.
it's one of those things of when you give yourself that permission to move out of perfectionism, you allow yourself a lot more freedom to live the life that you actually want to live, as opposed to the life that you think other people expect you to live, want you to live, all of those things. So it really, it leads to, I believe, a more satisfying and centered life.
Yep.
But it also is one of those things that it takes a lot less energy to, because maintaining a persona or trying to be perfect is exhausting.
It
But
sure
when you
is.
can be comfortable in your own skin and teach from that place or live from that place or lead from that place, it's still work, but it's
Yeah.
a different kind of work and it's a lot more energizing.
Man, there's so much good in everything you've shared with me there, and the first thing I'm drawn to is this idea of, hey, I'm not perfect at avoiding perfectionism,
Right?
and it's just
Exactly.
like, I'm not perfect at being not perfect, it's just this
Exactly
idea.
right.
So, because we're all guilty, and that person that you were describing with the piles and with this need to sort of work to the death, to the witching hours of the night, trying
Right.
to get something complete, like you're describing me in terms of how my life was from the moment I woke up to the moment I would go to sleep.
Yeah.
Again, up until probably about 10 years ago for me as well. And so much of
Yeah.
my shift came from the moment I started therapy, and a gentleman looks at me in the face and goes, brother, you're living an all or nothing life. It's like you're either all or you are nothing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there is no space in between that you're operating within. And so much of that perfectionism, again, you associate with this idea of the all or nothing life. But what I
That's
love
so true.
immediately is like the creating of the piles and the working to the very last minute. There's still moments in my life where I am guilty of that,
Yep.
100%. I don't turn my camera right now because there's a pile right there.
My pile's right there, Steve.
Like
It's right
people
there.
people love
Absolutely.
sending me books, and I'm just like, I'm gonna read them. I promise I'm gonna read them.
Exactly.
But if I
Exactly.
put the
Yeah. And
pile there,
until I have
surely
that
I'll read
perfect
them.
place to put it, right?
Right,
Well,
right.
it's amazing because I teach on perfectionism. I teach on worry. I have a keynote called "Is Your Hair on Fire?" and it's all about worry. And
That
one of
doesn't
the
work for me.
moments.
That title doesn't
Yeah,
work for
right.
me,
Exactly.
Mitch.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's in the past, right? But what's funny is, a great example of this is, I was going to speak at an event, and there's probably 500 people there, and I can't remember where it was at, maybe in New Orleans or something like that. And I just happened to put on social media the night before the event, isn't it ironic? Tomorrow I'm giving a keynote to 500 people and on overcoming worry,
Hmm.
and tonight I am tempted to worry.
Mm,
I think that's hilarious. What do you
yeah.
think, right? People engage with it. It was a lot of fun, right? Well, the next day I get to the event and a couple of people meet me and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" They're like, "Well, we follow you on social and we saw that you were worried last night. We wondered if you'd had a good night's sleep." And I was like, "Oh no, I slept like a baby." I
Mm,
said, what I spoke to there was that I was tempted to worry.
mm,
I wasn't actually worrying.
yeah.
And I said, "We'll talk about that difference in my keynote." But I said, what's important about that is that I said, we can't do this alone. And
Mm.
sometimes confessing the very things we're afraid of is the very thing that brings us freedom. And I said, "So thanks so much for checking on me, but I'm just fine." And I did just sleep like a baby. And what's funny about that was that audience, like those people were also leaders. And so they brought it into my intro that they were worried about me last night because I was speaking on worry and potentially worry. And it was funny in that, in the era when I was trying to be perfect and
Mhm.
look like I had it all together, I would have been horrified of something like that.
Sure.
But because I confessed that and they, confessed their worry about
Yeah.
me, all these kinds of things, my connection with that audience went through the roof, right? Instead of my credibility cracking,
Mhm.
my credibility was just so like forged with that group because I'm like, "Hey people, I need this every day. I don't
Yeah.
teach this because I got it all figured out.
Right.
I teach it because I need to be reminded of it every day." And that's the kind of thing where instead of hiding it, it became, kind of proof example number one that we're in this together.
Yeah, and the idea that, because that obviously serves this notion of, hey, if I'm willing to let my guard down enough where I don't have to look like a success. I don't have to look like I've got it all
Right.
figured out, like the guy in the red
Right.
Mercedes. Like,
Exactly
at
right. Yeah.
at
That
the end of the
guy,
day,
that
right?
freaking
That
guy.
guy. But for me, that story around the Mercedes, again, it makes me chuckle because I became a dad 6.5 years ago, and
Yeah.
for me, that decision came with, okay, we got to get a different car. And so suddenly now I'm driving around in a Chevy Traverse that's got room now for my second child as well. And
Congratulations.
I love the car. And I'm like, I
Right.
tell my wife all the time, I'm like, I don't care when these kids are done, I'm gonna keep driving this
That's right.
car. Like, this is my
Judge me all
car,
you
right?
want. It's
Right. And
exactly
so
right.
like
Yeah.
I don't, and but for me, like that, where I really want to shift here is like, you're alluding to it with this morning of this keynote, and people sort of really sort of seeing you for who you are because of that
Yeah.
willingness to simply say the temptation of worry was there. Something that I'm hearing is a reoccurring theme to shift from the perfectionism into this journey perspective is the art of
Yeah.
the discipline to do it. Like, because for
Yeah.
me, that's the hardest part. Is like I know there is a perfectionist inside of me that is always
Right.
knocking on the door, wanting to get to the surface.
Yeah.
Yet the work, as you alluded to with that audience, like the daily work that has to go into no. I'm on the path. I'm on my journey. So I'd love for you now, even maybe even shifting into this, putting the hat on as a coach that you are,
Yeah.
like what does some of that work maybe look like from your perspective when it comes to
Yeah.
simply having that discipline to stay on the road?
Yeah, I love that. It's such a great question too. So uh, I've had to wrestle with this and to understand it at multiple levels. And one bit of understanding that helped so much for me
Mm,
was understanding a little of the neuroscience and understanding what's going on in our brain.
yeah.
Because there was a part of me that's like, I must be broken. Especially, I had the awareness of like, oh, that's perfectionism. I need to like beat that. Right. And then whenever perfectionism would start knocking on the door, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, wait a second. I must not have beaten it. I don't know that I'll ever break out of this, all of that. And what I realized was there's actually some competing forces that are happening in our brain. And when we can understand those things, then it helps to de-escalate it and go, oh, no, this is kind of my brain, right?
Yeah.
So there are really three elements in the brain that are involved with perfectionism. And it's interesting because those things are also involved with worry. And I always say that perfectionism it's a gateway drug, right? Because perfectionism starts like the number of high achievers that I coach that they wrestle with perfectionism is off the charts because often it starts with a heart to achieve.
Mm,
Right? Like I want to do well. I
mm,
want to achieve. I want to win. I want to whatever it is, right?
yeah.
They set a big goal, big lofty goal, and then some of those initial elements of perfectionism of really performing at a higher level than everybody else. That starts it's like the gateway drug. But then it starts to move into performance. Then it starts to move into persona, all those
Yeah.
things. Now, what's beautiful about this is really it's our brain, right? So there, and I know you're a brain guy too. So, but there's the amygdala, which is about a walnut sized part of your brain. It's what I call it's your brain's bodyguard, right? The
Mm,
amygdala is constantly scanning for danger. It's amazing at what it does, but it's not so good at figuring out what's real or imagined.
yeah.
So our imagination is powerful. The amygdala is convinced oftentimes of things that are in our imagination. Those things seem real to the amygdala. So boom, all of a sudden we need to be on high alert, right?
Mhm.
And so what's interesting is the amygdala is always primed to look for danger, which is good if we were in the forest and it was bear season or whatever, the bears were hungry. Like it's good to have a finely tuned amygdala. But most of us are not in that kind of environment day to day, right?
Yeah.
So our amygdala works overtime on, hey, did my coworker just shoot me stink eye? Like, did something happen? Did
Right.
I say something? What was going on in that meeting? And all of a sudden the amygdala goes over, and the coworker's just like, ooh, bad burrito from last night, right?
Mhm.
All that stuff, right? But the amygdala is interpreting those things, saying, hey, is this danger real or not? Now,
Yeah.
what's interesting about the amygdala is the amygdala oftentimes will grab a hold of perfectionist tendencies and say, hey, that's one way to try to keep us out of trouble,
Yeah.
right? So what's interesting about the amygdala is always on high alert. Now there's another part of the brain. It's called the basal ganglia. And the basal ganglia is what I call the brain's project manager. The
Hmm.
basal ganglia is the thing that looks for rhythms and systems so that it can help the rest of the brain check out. The basal ganglia is the thing that if you had to drive to work this morning or drive home tonight, there's a good chance you'll remember getting out of the parking lot. There's a good chance you'll remember pulling into your driveway. but because of your basal ganglia, there's a very good chance you won't really remember much else.
Sure.
Because your basal ganglia kicks in and goes, I got this.
Yep.
I got a habit for this. I know what to do. And it allows your brain to then focus on other things and process, listen to a podcast, all of those things, right? So it's very good. The problem is the amygdala and the basal ganglia start working together. And the amygdala identifies things to worry about, to be concerned about, or to shift into perfectionism. And the basal ganglia goes, I got this. I know perfectionism, or I know worry. Like, I got this. And you don't even have to make the conscious thought.
Yeah.
But in 3 seconds, you're in high worry mode, high perfectionist mode, all those. You didn't even realize it, but it's the amygdala and the basal ganglia working together.
Yep.
Now, the third part of this is the prefrontal cortex.
Yep.
The prefrontal cortex, that's where we do our executive thinking. Now, I will say, anybody with little kids or teenagers, your prefrontal cortex doesn't really connect. For women, it connects around 18. For guys, it connects around 21 to 23. So not to say you can't engage your prefrontal cortex, but younger people have a harder time with this, just so you know. So if you have teenagers, don't be like, make your prefrontal cortex
Why are you not using your
work,
prefrontal
right?
cortex?
Exactly. But the prefrontal cortex, what's beautiful of the prefrontal cortex is the boss. The prefrontal cortex is what can overpower both the basal ganglia and the amygdala and say, whoa, fellas, that's okay, right? One of my friends, her name is Lise Cartwright. She's written over 40 books, almost all of them bestsellers on Amazon, incredibly creative. Her basal ganglia and amygdala go into overtime when she's in writing mode, especially when she's close to publishing, because the amygdala will say, wait, there's danger. Maybe people won't like your book. There's danger. Maybe this one won't be a bestseller. There's danger. Maybe it will be a colossal failure. And the basal ganglia kicks in and goes, whoa, I've got a habit, or I've got a system for this. Let me start worrying, that kind of stuff. Lise has trained her prefrontal cortex to identify when she has those doubts. And she's actually named her amygdala. She named her amygdala Nigel. Now, she's from New Zealand, so she has this great accent. And
It's my dad's name, so that's very...
Oh my gosh, so yeah, you'll appreciate this. I said, well, why Nigel? What she says is like, oh my gosh, that's great. But she's like, well, I thought of who was the safest, least dangerous kid in my primary school, and it was
describing
Nigel.
my dad right now. He's the
Exactly
least
right. So I'm sorry, Nigel. I love you. You've done a great job with Steve. I love it. But what I love about that is what she will do is she doesn't say, Nigel, you're dumb, or Nigel, and like push down Nigel. What she does is she'll say, Nigel, thank you so much for alerting me to possible dangers. But in fact, I'm not at risk. I've done this before. And even if it doesn't go the way I thought, it still will be worthwhile. So thank you for trying to alert me to dangers, but I'm just fine. So she soothes Nigel and she moves in. Now, I would say, as we're tempted to move into perfectionism, as I am almost daily, right? If I'm tempted to move into a room and instead of asking myself, how do I feel? What am I excited about? My internal Nigel would say, how do you want to act? How should you act in a room like this, right? Like, how do you want to have everyone perceive you? Like, those are not good questions. So my prefrontal cortex, I don't call my amygdala Nigel, but I'm like, all right, bodyguard, I'm good. The questions I want to ask is, how am I today? Who do I want to engage with? What kind of energy do I want to bring to this room? What kind of value do I want to bring to this situation? Where could I possibly be bringing excellence? Like, that's where curiosity meets with worry and perfectionism and can overpower, because I start to ask myself, my prefrontal cortex starts to ask better questions. How can I bring value? Who could I be watching out for in this situation? I used to worry as I would move into a room of strangers, like, what are people going to think of me? Will people like me? Now, instead, I'll say, hey, I wonder who I could help in this room. I wonder who needs to be connected. Who should I be watching out for? Who feels disregarded in this room? How can I watch for that person and engage with that person? Who's scared in this room? Right? Even if I was scared 2 seconds ago, or at least tempted to be scared 2 seconds ago. Now my brain is scanning the room, and instead of worried about what people will think about me, I'm looking for that person that's probably worried about that to see if I can help them out.
Yeah.
And that changes how I feel, that changes how I act, it changes how I walk, how I engage, all of those things. So I'm still tempted almost every freaking time, but it allows me to just say, hey, amygdala, bodyguard, thanks so much. I appreciate you, but I got this.
Yeah.
And then stay curious, ask some better questions, and it's amazing how those will guide you.
It's such important stuff. If you're hearing things here for the first time, I I truly hope that this is your invitation to maybe start giving yourself a little bit more grace,
Yeah.
because this is everything you're saying. I'm educated on this, you're educated on this, so many people are not. And again, we allow ourselves to fall into more of an autopilot way of
Yep.
behaving,
Yep.
and that autopilot way of creating habits and the way our thought processes start to just roll into one another and become the consistent perspective that we start to
Yeah.
have now on the world, on how we show up. Suddenly now we're just living with perfectionist tendencies without even knowing it sometimes. But
Right.
it's because our minds have been built over thousands of years
Right.
to do exactly that, unless we're willing to interrupt, unless we're willing to build that level of self-awareness, just simply for, hey, what is the self? Like, how does
Yeah.
the self operate? How does the self think, to eventually arrive at this awareness of how can I be asking better questions? And
Yep.
I love the simplicity of that, Mitch, because for me, and I'd like to believe you agree, like from a coaching side of things, how can we make it simple? How can we
Yeah.
make it as simple as
Exactly.
how can we make it as simple and digestible as possible? And
Yep.
again, if you're simply not asking questions to yourself
Yeah.
daily from a place of curiosity, from a place of interest and intrigue, then maybe that's just the easiest place for you to start in
Yep.
everything that Mitch is alluding to here. Because I'm hearing that right now, and I'm constantly working in that space with my clients, but at the same time, it's one thing for me to do it when I'm switched on and engaged with a client, but it's another thing to, you were referencing being around kids before. Like, when it's a Saturday and it's hour 7 of the Saturday and all I've done is parent, 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 parent,
Yep.
and you suddenly find yourself falling into tendencies that are significantly less cognizant, like
Yep.
much more autopilot, and
That's exactly right.
you lose yourself in that moment, but
Yep.
you also have choices to make in those moments too. And I think so much,
Yeah.
Mitch, of what you're saying here, brother, is like, can we have the discipline simply to ask questions and make choices that, left to our own devices, you know, maybe we wouldn't be making, right?
Yep. That's exactly right. That's so true. And it is. It's that I'm with you. I need to keep things simple
Hmm.
on a day-to-day basis, but especially on those long days, or
Yeah.
like you're saying, a long Saturday. Like I got to keep things simple.
Hmm.
And I do that with my clients, and we also coach coaches, and we coach speakers, and that's it's like, because we tend to have a heart for research. Like I know you are a smart guy, and you love to dive into the science and the neuroscience and all that stuff. It's one of those things that I always say, dive into the research,
Yeah.
dive into the technology, dive into all of it,
Hmm.
but always boil it down to something that is easy to remember in the hardest situations, right?
Yeah.
So, for me, that's one of the things, like even the networking thing. I'm also a recovering introvert, right? Like, and
Yeah.
introverts are great. Like, I am an introvert.
Mm.
What's funny is, God's great sense of humor is I'm an introvert, and my day job involves me going into rooms of 300 to 500 strangers
Same here.
all the
Same here.
time,
Yep.
right? Like,
Yep. Yep.
yeah. And so for me, like one of the, sometimes it's a question, sometimes it's a phrase, but when I go into a networking situation or a group of strangers,
Mm.
when the perfectionist is knocking on the door, when the amygdala is suggesting that I should be worried about what people are thinking of me, I'm reminded of a phrase: don't focus on being interesting, be interested.
Love that.
And so it's like, even in those situations, the higher stress situations, I can always be interested in other people. And it is
Mm.
amazing, as my mentor once said, if you focus on being interested, not interesting, you will be the most interesting person in the room.
Hmm. That's so great.
because people love to talk about themselves. People love to talk about subjects they're passionate about.
Yeah.
So you will be the best conversationalist ever. We train coaches all the time, and I always say, hey, in a coaching environment, if you're only talking, 20% or less of a coaching call, people will think you're the best conversationalist on the planet.
Yeah. It's so
Right?
true. And
Yeah.
it's such a fascinating metric. It's something actually the beauty of the world of AI now is that if any clients that I work with on a virtual capacity, I can have an AI note taker and it can actually tell me like how much was I talking and how much was the client
Right.
talking. And it's
Exactly.
something I take very seriously in my work. It's like
Yeah.
whenever I see that number to use that number, it's funny you said 20% because I couldn't agree more. Like when I flirt with 23%, 25%, 28%, I'm like, were you coaching today or were you
Yeah.
pushing hard? Were you pushing a little too hard? Were you
Yeah.
really being, to use your term, like that term, were you being interested or were you just trying to sort of be the specialist, be the smartest guy on the
Yep.
call, so to speak? And so
Right.
I think that is such a powerful way of looking at it. But somewhere where I definitely want to touch on this is something you said earlier around this having a heart to achieve. I think that, man, that is such a beautiful way of actually prefacing how we are trying to be a high performer. Like it's coming from a good place, or maybe it's not sometimes,
Yeah.
but at the
Yeah.
same time, can we do the work to ensure that if it to make it come from a good place? Because I'd like to believe that once we can establish that, all of these points that you're making around curiosity and open-mindedness and staying right where your feet are, like that becomes so much easier when we give ourselves that credit of, hey, I'm not trying to achieve this for me, myself, and I. There's this deeper reason for it, something that connects with my truest self that is probably much bigger than myself when I give it enough thought. And so where I want to go here, Mitch, is you term yourself as a success coach.
Right.
That's your title, and I love it because immediately my mind goes, well, what do you mean by success? So
Exactly.
and so like for me, so I really
Exactly.
want to, you can say achieve, you can have a heart to achieve, you can have a heart to succeed, whatever it may be. I think so much of these words can definitely intertwine, but where do you maybe start when it comes to simply establishing and identifying, hey, is this coming from the right place when it comes to
Yeah.
our desire to achieve and succeed?
Yeah. I love that. Well, I love that you brought up the title success coach
Hmm.
and in relationship to this specific question because
Yeah.
they are actually interrelated,
Mm,
so connected. And it's funny because I love having a title that begets a question. I
absolutely.
think sometimes when people think business coach, life coach, people just automatically assume, oh, I think I know what that is, right?
Right.
But when I say success coach, almost everybody goes, well, wait, what does that mean?
Mm.
And I'll say, oh, I'm glad you asked because it said, when I talk about being a success coach, one of the first questions I ask my clients that I work with is, what is success to you?
Hmm.
That's what I want to help you achieve. I don't want you to achieve what I label as success. I want you to achieve what you label as success. Now, what's
Mm.
really interesting, and I'm expensive. I know you're expensive too. Like I'm expensive, so I don't work with schleps. Like I don't
Right.
work with people that are just barely making it in life and
Right.
lazy and not doing anything. I work with high performers. But when I ask them, hey, what does success look like? And I will put I'll put an additional statement on that. What does success look like in this season?
Mm.
Because I mean, yes, I want somebody to have success in life
Yeah.
for like we want generational success, all those things. But sometimes that's too big a target to try to clarify. So to say, what does success look like for you in this season?
Yeah.
Oftentimes it honestly kind of the best response is I don't know.
Hmm.
Because most people they're achieving success or high performers that are listening to this podcast. You got a lot of high performers, right? And they're achieving success, there is no doubt. But often they're achieving the success of their organization, right? They have been given a set of tasks or specific objectives in their role for their team that they lead, all those things. And that's great, right?
Mm.
That is a part of that success. But what does success mean for you?
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, oftentimes they'll be like, well, I don't know. And I was like, that's where we start.
Yeah.
Let's define what success looks like for you in this season, in your career, in your role. Maybe as you're starting a business, in your family. You mentioned you've got your kiddos, right? Like, what does it mean to be a successful dad? not just globally, but to you and to your two wildly precious kiddos. What is success in this season?
Yeah.
Success is not being perfect. Success is not having all the answers, right? But what does success look like in that relationship? And so that's what I love about being a success coach is I help them define what success is for them in this season, and then we build plans to go after that,
Yeah.
right? Not just success in general or what somebody else defines as success or success via Instagram or whatever, right? Like true, deep, gratifying success.
It's,
And what's wild is that that if somebody can verbalize what success is, they are infinitely more likely to achieve it.
yeah. It's the personalization of it, right? I mean, it's
Right.
like when you personalize it, it's so empowering. You know, it's one of those terms that come up all the time in my coaching work is to empower. You know, we've got this, you know, these leaders that are now really they're ready to level up within our organization. How do we
Yeah.
empower them? How do we empower them? And it's just like, well, start really simple. Like right now, you've got a vision for what you want these leaders to become and the role they want to play. But what do they want?
Yeah.
What do they want? Like, because
Exactly.
if it's all about the picture that you're painting as a leader above someone, I'm sorry, but that's not empowerment. You know,
Right.
that's simply putting out this destination that you want somebody to walk toward. Whereas what would it look like to just get more of their side of the conversation? And that's what you're
Exactly.
doing in those initial conversations with the client. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, not only what does success look like to you, because using that example of your friend from earlier, you could say, I want a business that is worth $10 million. Cool. That's awesome. Like, how on earth are you going to actually measure that in this season of life, knowing that that
Right.
could be years from now? How do we bring you into this moment? But also, why? Like, what?
Yeah.
Why you? Right? And I think that's what you're doing, right? You're saying to someone in that moment, "Hey, why you? Why? Yes, you want this success, but why should you be the one that gets this success? Like, how do we
Right.
personalize it on that deeper level?"
Yeah. That's true. And I'll also ask, all right, if they name a specific tactical, measurable goal. That's
Mm,
fantastic,
yeah.
right? Because that helps us to narrow the focus and say, these are the tactics we can use to get there that
Mm,
more likely increase, the chance of you actually achieving it. But one of the other things, the questions behind that question is, hey, what are you hoping? What experience are you hoping that achievement will bring you?
mm.
Because
So
that's
good.
also a part of the journey. Because
Yeah.
there's so many athletes that probably put their goal on saying that I want a gold medal, whether
Yeah.
it's a world or whether it's an Olympic gold medal. I want a gold medal, and if that's all they're focused on, when they achieve it, they might get to enjoy it for a little bit, but
Hmm.
then they're focused on, okay, well, what's the next gold medal? All those things, right? But to say, hey, what the gold medal is my goal. But what do you hope that that brings? I
Yeah.
hope that brings a sense of achievement. I hope that brings a sense of accomplishment. I hope that brings a sense of satisfaction. That I set my heart or set my eyes on a goal and I achieved it. All those things. And I was like, okay, so you're hoping for achievement. You're hoping for satisfaction. You're hoping for a sense of purpose. I said, what's beautiful about that is that gold medal will be a part of that. But how do we experience some of that as we're on the journey towards the goal?
Yeah.
And what's beautiful about that is, I'm not saying that, hey, give yourself like a pass and just experience the experience without going for the goals. Like,
Mhm.
no, we just don't want to miss the journey
Yeah.
as we go towards the goal.
Yeah.
So what I love is the richness that people start to feel when they allow themselves that to go, oh, yes, that is going to be an incredible experience. I'm looking forward to that. But if they only get silver,
Hmm.
which is still an amazing accomplishment, or if they only
Yeah.
get bronze, or if they only make the team, they will still have much of what they were hoping to achieve,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
experience. And that's what I want to help them do, which also helps to really lead to true sustainability,
Mhm.
true grit, true resilience. People will stay with it longer when they understand kind of not only the what, but the why behind it. and what, what that brings, and it allows them to, come around to what we were talking about at the beginning, is to enjoy the journey more.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly what we've done here. We brought it right back to where we started, is this idea of, if you want someone to really appreciate and stay committed to the journey, what better way to do that than to actually paint some of these ideal experiences along the way and just keep an eye out for them. Like, we're not chasing towards them. We don't have to hit them by a certain day, but can we just at least have that visual on the front end to say, hey, there's going to come a moment on this journey where I'm excited to experience this very environment that I painted back weeks ago, months ago, maybe years ago, because that's the season that I eventually want to be experiencing. That's the season that I eventually want to be in. But Mitch, here's the thing, man. I'm gonna have to put a time out right now. I'm gonna have to say it's time for us to end this conversation and move to Dream, Think, Do on your podcast, because for me, brother, like, this has been an absolute blast, and we could quite easily turn this into an hour and a half episode of Growth Ready. But before we go and do and make that mistake, let's cut it right there. Let's cut it right there.
Part two, right? Yeah, exactly.
Let's cut it right there. And hey, we will more than likely continue on a very same theme when I hop onto your pod. But at the moment, what I want to do here, Mitch, in closing, is just give you the opportunity just to share with everybody where we can learn more about you, where we can access more of your content, because I have no doubt that people listening to Growth Ready are very, very interested to continue building on that education with what you have to provide as well. So what can we learn, and where can we access you more?
I love it. So the best place to start is just go to mitchmatthews.com. That's Matthews with 2 T's. And that's kind of where you can find out more about our universe and the things that we're doing as far as the coaching that we're doing, but also how we're helping coaches and speakers. So a lot of people have been helped out by that, and we love doing it. You can also, we do something kind of special, but we send out a weekly email that we call the 4 Things email. And it's just 4 things that I'm learning from the journey or teaching on, experiencing those kinds of things. And you can go to mitchmatthews.com/4things to get on that list. I know a lot of people aren't looking forward to more emails, but this is one that people really do treasure. And we've got an incredible tribe of folks that are walking out these 4 things. So that would be one other thing that I would want your folks to be able to enjoy. And I can't wait to send the 4 things where I'm featuring your podcast too. So yeah, exactly. So it just keeps coming around.
That's right. All the more reason for me to get signed up, right? All the more reason.
That's exactly right.
Awesome.
I love
Mitch,
it.
Appreciate you. Thank you just for the sheer generosity of all your insights, and best of luck with everything, brother. And I know I'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Literally and figuratively, right?
All the best. And my thanks again to Mitch for joining us on this episode. And I'm going to get right to the heart of something that he and I had a small laugh about there in the middle of the conversation. This idea of not being perfect at not being perfect. In other words, the perfectionist in me, and he's still very much in there, from time to time will come to the surface. And there's probably a trait of yours that, if I operate this way the majority of the time, eventually it's going to lead to me being burnt out, me being dissatisfied, unfulfilled, exhausted, etc. How about we just give ourselves a little bit of grace? And on this growth journey that we all are on, whether it be in life, whether it be in our careers, let's simply acknowledge that there's going to be some traits that don't do us service if used in the majority. But if we can just become more aware of the fact that they are operating in some way, shape, or form, then we can maybe start to do some work around how we let it come to the surface at times, and then how we handle it when it does. The perfectionist in me is guilty of those examples that Mitch provided, whether it be having things pile up on my desk, whether it means working towards the end of the deadline. I certainly do that from time to time. I don't do it every day. There was certainly a time in my life, though, where that was how I would certainly describe my most of the time, if not all of the time. That works come from simply building that self-awareness, acknowledging that there is this part of my game that isn't serving me the way it could be. And my challenge to you is to simply embrace, identify what that part of your game might be. What is it about you that is coming to the surface all too often that is not serving your growth, that is not helping you ready yourself for what you are capable of going on and achieving? And what might simply acknowledging it and owning it do to start doing some of the necessary work around it to maybe tame it a little more? So that, hey, if you are a perfectionist, for example, How can you just be a perfectionist on occasion? How can you be guilty of what comes with perfectionism from time to time, as opposed to it being who you are and how you show up daily? So again, my thanks to Mitch for this fantastic conversation. My thanks to you, as always, for taking the time to join us on the show. If this is the first time that you've listened to us, I appreciate you being willing to give us a try. I have no doubt that we've been able to satisfy this desire of yours to listen to the show. And so all I ask is that you don't allow this to be the last. Make sure that this is, in fact, an opportunity now for you to build upon this, to learn more about it by subscribing to the show. And in the meantime, best of luck with anything and everything going on in your world. And I look forward to doing this again with you very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to Growth Ready. If you liked what you heard and are feeling ready to grow, be sure to leave a 5-star rating, subscribe to the show, and share the episode with someone you know is ready to fuel their growth journey today. We love our community, so don't hesitate to reach out to us at podcast@growthready.com. And until next time, we are Growth Ready, and you will be too.